I've talked about this a lot lately, both at the blog and in Facebook postings, and I probably won't dig into it too much because we do want to get on to callers, but this idea of theism and atheism and how they relate with skepticism. There's been a lot of discussion about, atheism is not a, proper subset of skepticism and vice versa, or that skepticism is not the mother set for atheism. And they're right. It's not. And I've never said that somebody couldn't be both a skeptic and a theist. I was a skeptic long before I became an atheist. The difference, or the point that I would make, is that I wasn't skeptical about my theistic beliefs. At the time that I was a skeptic and a theist, it's because I wasn't applying skeptical ideals to my theistic beliefs. And my primary objection to this thing that I've dubbed the skeptic schism has been that there seems to be a contingent of the skeptic community who, in order to, they seem to want to go too far, in my opinion, to keep the peace or misportray some people's views by saying, yeah, there are theists who are skeptics, and we understand that not everybody necessarily agrees on that, but let's kind of cut them some slack and let's not address that. And I'm like, my primary position is, it's not like I'm going to run and get in their face and smack them around and what the hell are you thinking and why haven't you given up this nonsense yet? It's absurd. But likewise, nothing is beyond question. There are no sacred cows. There's nothing that we shouldn't be able to examine critically. This assertion that there's no testable claims, so there's nothing to look at, is nonsense. If we've learned anything from skepticism, it is that if a claim is untestable, you could not possibly produce sufficient evidence to justify believing it, and therefore, what skepticism has to say about untestable claims is they are not believable. And that's the only thing that I would ever actually say about how my skepticism led to atheism.
I get accused all the time of arbitrarily dismissing, a possibility.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that miracles are impossible by definition, and that God technically is not physically possible because the only way we can indicate him is by something that defies all natural laws.
Right.
Technically, it's not a possibility, but I open my parameters even to that. Now, they tell me that I'm dismissing a possibility, but in fact, I don't have to dismiss what has never been indicated.
Right.
And I don't understand why people can't bring me a reason to open up this, show me something that indicates that, and I'll accept it.
You don't even
or I'll at least entertain the idea.
Yeah. You don't even have to get to the point where you ever mention that, by definition, miracles are impossible, because all we're really saying is you have something that you think is a miracle. You need to demonstrate it so that we can investigate it. Now, I'm of the opinion, the default position, that even if this phenomenon that you're going to identify, if it actually does occur, it's not in fact a miracle, even if it's something that we perhaps can't understand or necessarily explain. But the first step is to actually demonstrate that there's a there, and for some reason they can't get past that first block.
Yeah, and somebody told me that I had a presupposition that there was nothing but the material, and I said no. In fact, I actually believe that there is a great deal more to the universe than we have ever perceived. I will not speculate what it is. I have no idea. I suspect it's there, and I bet that when we find out what it is, it will be better, grander, more spectacular, and more interesting than anyone's notion of a God.
Yeah. And on that note, while we've got a lot more to talk about, there's actually somebody waiting online with a question that actually kind of mirrors a little bit of what we're talking about. We've got, is it Stefan in Brooklyn?
Yes.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay.
Thanks for calling.
Yeah, I guess, I would have called at least a month ago. So, but I'm just calling on a different note, different from what I was called for last time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even from a scientific point of view. I just want to know what were the basic reasons for your acceptance of atheism?
Oh, all right. I have a slight problem with the terminology, but I'll skip that just to answer your question. And the answer is that religious claims failed to meet their burden of proof.
If I may, it's not that we accept atheism, because you're talking about accepting a non-belief. Or how about rephrase it? Our rejection of a belief means the same thing, I suppose. You're suggesting that we believe in something that was never indicated. Until it is indicated, I can't believe it. I mean, you can make up any number of things that might come to your imagination, but when you posit them as true, it is incumbent upon you to produce a reason why we should believe that that is true.
And by you, he's speaking, broadly. The terminology thing that I have a problem with is something that he just touched on, and I think one of the best explanations I ever heard came from Dennis, and it's when you phrase it that way, like what made you accept atheism, or as some dishonest people have tried to argue, show me the proof for atheism. It's not, that portrays this as if atheism is some ideology that's selling something. As atheists, it's not that we're selling something else other than religion. It's that we're not buying what religion is selling. And just because I'm not buying this doesn't mean I'm selling something else. It simply means I'm not buying that.
It's funny. You're saying exactly the same thing you said the last time I were here. You mean the questions haven't gotten any better?
Yeah, we end up dealing with a lot of the same questions and issues over and over again, partly because the audience changed, and partly because for some reason there's a difficulty in grasping some of these topics, with a broader audience. So what else do you have, Stephen? Stephen?
What are the burden of proofs that we haven't met? That's what I want to know.
Well, anything. I mean, you have a belief system that is dependent upon faith, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Faith is an assertion of absolute conviction that is assumed independent of evidence and which must be defended against all evidence to the contrary.
Right, but my reason for asking that is because in the last show, Matt said
my answer
atheism is not based on evolution.
My answer is that the belief in a God requires faith. Anything that requires faith in lieu of evidence is, in my philosophy, automatically rejected. It has to have evidence. There has to be something to indicate it.
Right, and the evidence that you're talking about science, right?
Well, yes.
Okay, but what I'm saying is last show, Matt had indicated very well that his atheism is not based on evolution.
Correct. Evolution is irrelevant to whether or not I'm an atheist, because evolution deals with one question, the origins of biological diversity, and theism addresses another question as to whether or not there is a God. And while I will admit that there are people who link the two, and that there may be different ways to link the two, my rejection of theism is because the theistic claims did not satisfy their burden of proof. And it has nothing to do with whether or not I accepted evolution. And by the way, the demonstration of this is that there are plenty of theists, Christians of all stripes, who do accept evolution because it's a fact that's demonstrated by evidence.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very incoherent for theists to accept evolution according to common descent from, as Darwin described it, because they call it an undirected process. If God is directing it, it doesn't make sense to say that it's undirected.
I agree.
Well, if anything else that happens in your life, I mean, any trivial collection of instances that seem unrelated that might ultimately lead you to a certain conclusion, you might think that God was looking out for you and God arranged for these things to happen so that you would be in this place at this time, and it was so fortuitous. It had to have happened for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. So if that's the case, then evolution, although it seems completely undirected, could well have been orchestrated by whoever wrote the script for the existence of everything. I mean, he's got everything all laid out. He's written the prophecies. He's already told us how the movie ends. So how does this deviate from your perspective? Why can't a God who organizes every single thing organize every single thing?
Well, okay. Well, I'm still on my. I still haven't gotten off what are his reasons for evolution, because he's saying that that his atheism is not based on evolution, but he just keeps buzzing to say that it's just based on that we haven't met our burden of proof.
Correct.
Yes, so, and we need to make it.
Proof. You have to tell me, because proof indicates evidence, and evidence.
No. Proof doesn't indicate evidence. We need to work on some definitions here. First of all, evolution is population mechanics. Okay, that's it. It's reproductive populations and genetics. That's all you're talking about. That has nothing to do with whether or not we believe that all events are orchestrated by some higher intelligence, or that there are anthropomorphic entities with magic powers. They're completely different subjects. When we say that you haven't met the burden of proof, we are saying